President Biden and bipartisan leaders are not only complicit, they are full partners in Netanyahu's war crimes.
I want you guys to take a notice of something when she said bipartisan leaders. See, here's the thing. I want people to recognize. When they say something's bipartisan, that's Washington speak for both parties are willing to screw you over. That's what bipartisan means in Washington speak. They'll say, oh my God, this is a bipartisan bill. Yeah, to screw you. 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. And ultimately, everything really that they do is bipartisan. They just don't want you to know it. They don't want you to know that they're willing to screw you over in your bank accounts. That is bipartisan. Because here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize that. Well, a lot of people realize. It's just some people have divorced this fact from their minds. The Democratic and Republican Party work together in tandem to make sure that their bosses, their overlords at the top, get to keep themselves in power. Now, you all know that, right? But for some odd reason, some of you think one side is better than the other, when really it's a good cop, bad cop situation. 2024 is going to be interesting. Interesting. So if you guys have not heard already, Dr. Jill Stein is running again in 2024. So let's take a look at her campaign video, because I think that's going to be important to see what she says. Now, if you guys have already seen it, then good, you guys get to see it again with me. I have my thoughts. So we'll take a look. Let me see. All right, so I got my thoughts as well. So let me share the screen. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Free Palestine. All right.
People are tired of being thrown under the bus by wealthy elites and their bought politicians. Tired of living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to pay the rent, locked in student debt and medical debt, child poverty doubling, rising diseases of despair, growing hopelessness. The political system is broken. The 2 Wall Street parties are bought and paid for. Over 60% of us now say the bipartisan establishment's failed us, and we need a party that serves the people. I'm Jill Stein, and I'm running for president to offer that choice for the people outside of the failed 2-party system. We'll put solutions to the crises we face, crushing inequality, endless war, and climate collapse. And we'll put these front and center in this election and on the ballot across the country. The ruling parties that got us into this mess aren't getting us out. Both parties are squandering trillions on the endless war machine, fueling conflict around the world, while tens of millions here at home lack food, housing, healthcare. Democrats have betrayed their promises for working people, youth, and the climate again.
Now, just as an aside to many people who may not know, the United States literally gives over $3 billion a year to Israel. Yet, we still do not have universal health care in this country. So while we're funding these wars, while we're giving a blank check essentially to a lot of these foreign conflicts and wars, where's the blank check for us? Where is the relief when it comes to housing for those of us? 500,000 sleeping out on the street. That's just the streets alone. We're not talking about the homeless people that may be sleeping on the couches, like your couch and my couch. Or what about the homeless people that are sleeping in motels? Or what about the homeless people that can't afford to essentially have a place of their own? They have to still stay with their parents, right? Because it's not that they want to stay with their parents, it's that they have no choice, right? They're living with their parents still under duress. Or you have people who are struggling. Like, hey, I'm still on food stamps, right? Thank God I get something. Like, I get what, like $35 a month from food stamps. So a lot of us are really feeling the pain. And yet we see Israel getting $3 billion a year. And don't they have something like universal health care? What about us? Like, they can have it, we can't? And then how many dollars, how many of our federal dollars have Ukraine got over the last 18 months? They've gotten billions after billions after billions after billions, just so that the United States can eventually do a regime change in Russia. Let's be real with it. All right. Let's not dispense with the whole, oh, well, whatever they could be doing there. They could be, helping the Ukrainians with combat against Russian invasion, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. What does the United States really want to do? Let's put that all on the table right now. The United States really wants to get at Russia just so that they can take out Vladimir Putin and then put in their own version of a puppet dictator that they would like. They're doing the exact same thing that they did with Boris Yeltsin back in 94. Let's be honest, all right? They even bragged about it in Time magazine. Don't make me pull up the picture again. So this is basically what it is. And because Vladimir Putin doesn't want to play ball, and because according in 2014, there was over 14,000 Ukrainian, ethnic Russian-speaking Ukrainians that were massacred by their right-wing fascistic government because a coup was done, and it was helped along by, oh my God, was it Janet Yellen? I know, what's his name? Warmonger. John McCain was part of it. They actually asked Vladimir Putin, they were like, hey, man, you need to come over here and help us because they're not treating us right. And Vladimir Putin was like, I don't know. Next thing you know, the straw broke the camel's back because NATO kept moving its member states eastward, even though they promised they would never do that. And so now look at what is going on with the proxy war in Ukraine. And then the United States is like, okay, we're going to keep bankrolling Ukraine. They have all that money. Just like, what did Tupac say? They have money for war but can't feed the poor. That's what it is. Let's continue.
And then again, while Republicans don't even make such promises in the first place, and both parties are a danger to our democracy, expanding censorship, criminalizing protest, throwing competitors off the ballot, suppressing debates,
American people who've been systematically locked out of these debates,
rigging their primaries. So forget the pundits and the...
Yes, and by the way, I had Matthew Ho on, who he was running for senator. He was a Green Party member running for senator in North Carolina, and he was talking about all the issues that were happening, how the Democratic Party was trying to get the Green Party off the ballot in North Carolina. Right now, let me ask you this. How's the Democratic primary going? There is no Democratic primary. Even though there's somebody running, Williamson, there is no Democratic primary going on because they don't want a Democratic primary. I guess screw democracy, I guess. You know, the Democratic Party is no more democratic than the Federal Express is part of the federal government. It's just name bullshit. It's like thinking Burger King is the actual king of burgers. What? The hell? The Democratic Party is not democratic. And Burger King is not the king of burgers. And Dairy Queen is not the queen of dairy. Jeez Louise. Anywho, yeah. Democracy? What's that?
The attack dogs who tell you to ignore your misery and just keep voting for those who caused it in the first place. Change won't come from the ruling elites. It comes from we, the people. And when we stand together, we can create living wage jobs for all Americans. We can guarantee an economic bill of rights with the right to a job, to healthcare, to housing, to food, education, and more. We can abolish student debt, medical debt. We can create a Green New Deal with millions of jobs to fight climate collapse and protect Mother Earth. And we can ensure our constitutional rights and freedoms and justice for all. We can end the endless wars and rampant militarism and use diplomacy and international law instead to end violence, occupation, and apartheid. We do have the power, and we can use it in this election to start building an America and a world that works for all of us. Go to JillStein2024.com and join us.
All right, so, and she said go to her website, so that's what we're doing. So as far as Jill Stein's website, it's still new, so she has quite a bit of work to do as far as laying out the groundwork for her platform. So there's just 5 tabs that you can look at. We'll go over these really quick just so that we can get a synopsis of what her campaign will mean. The first one is a just economy. It says we need an economy that works for all of us, not just the wealthy and powerful. To reverse surging inequality and insecurity, we need an economic bill of rights, including the right to a living wage job, housing, food, healthcare, education, and more, so that all of us are guaranteed the basic security for a good life. So basically, what she just basically said in the video, she said, real Green New Deal, from record heat waves and wildfires to devastating hurricanes, droughts, and floods. The warning signs are clear. We must take a decisive action now to fight runaway global heating and prevent the worst case scenario of climate collapse. We need a Green New Deal with massive investment in green jobs, industries, and technologies to revitalize the American economy, improve our quality of life, protect our planet, and safeguard our children's future. So we're going to be moving on to the next one. Freedom, equality, and justice for all. It says Americans cherish ideals of liberty and justice, yet countless of millions are still fighting for basic rights. We must put an end to the shameful legacy of systemic discrimination against women, Black and brown people, Indigenous people, immigrants, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQIA+ community and other marginalized groups, and come together to ensure our rights, freedoms, and justice for all. Peace and global human rights. Says bipartisan endless war machines enriches military contractors, lobbyists, and politicians, while it fuels devastation around the world and impoverishes the American people. We must end the endless wars and create a new foreign policy based on diplomacy, international law, and human rights to oppose violence, occupation, and apartheid. So this was a shot at Israel. And then the last one is real democracy to empower people. Our democracy is on life support. I think she's being a little too generous there, but that's my opinion. Says belief in our political system is at historic lows, and the number of Americans who feel that neither establishment party represents them is at a record high. We need to revive our democracy with full spectrum of reforms to empower the people, including real choice on the ballot, because without freedom of choice in elections, there is no democracy. So that's basically the policy platform so far. So she just announced on Thursday, and I kind of had a bit of a feeling that this was coming because a few weeks ago, Jill Stein was actually on Savvy Sab's program, and she was basically speaking about there may be a possibility of her running, and she didn't specify which office. It could have been the House, it could have been the Senate, could have been the White House. Well, now we know as of Thursday that it is the White House yet again. So she is actually talking about that. Now, what's been in the news as of late is the fact that she has been talking about quite frequently on Twitter, and as of late, especially about what's going on in Palestine, specifically Gaza and really the West Bank, by the hands of Israel. Now, as for what Dr. Jill Stein has specified regarding her remarks, I think that her remarks are a lot better than even a lot of people that would signify as the squad in Congress. A lot of them are simply calling for just a ceasefire. We just want to stop. We just want to stop the killing. We just want to stop Israel just for a little bit, so the Palestinians can run away and lose their land. And then guess what? Israel gets the land, and they ain't got to worry about Palestinians no more. Even though the land wasn't theirs in the first place. So Jill Stein actually come out in more stronger support for Palestinian rights. And let's go and take a look at this, because I honestly think that this really should be the least of what anyone should be saying as far as the issue regarding Israel and Palestine. I think this is the floor. It should be the floor, even though it is not for a lot of politicians. So kudos to Dr. Jill Stein on this one.
I want to speak to the massacre now taking place before our eyes in Gaza. I speak as someone who deplores violence in all its forms and condemns violence against civilians of any nation. The war crimes being perpetrated by Netanyahu against Palestinians, however, are in a league of their own and have reached genocidal proportions, with Palestinians denied food, water, medicine, and electricity, while being relentlessly bombed as they're forced to flee their homes, running for their lives. President Biden and bipartisan leaders are not only complicit, they are full partners in Netanyahu's war crimes.
I want you guys to take a notice of something when she said bipartisan leaders. See, here's the thing. I want people to recognize. When they say something's bipartisan, that's Washington speak for both parties are willing to screw you over. That's what bipartisan means in Washington speak. They'll say, oh my God, this is a bipartisan bill. Yeah, to screw you. 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. And ultimately, everything really that they do is bipartisan. They just don't want you to know it. They don't want you to know that they're willing to screw you over in your bank accounts, that it's bipartisan. Because here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize that. Well, a lot of people realize. It's just some people have divorced this fact from their minds. The Democratic and Republican Party work together in tandem to make sure that their bosses, their overlords at the top, get to keep themselves in power. Now, you all know that, right? But for some odd reason, some of you think one side is better than the other, when really it's a good cop, bad cop situation. You're in the interrogation room, and the bad cop, he'll slam his hand on on the table. He will treat you horribly, yell, scream, shout at you. Look, he'll put the light in your face, right? But then you get the other cop. They're calm, they're cool, they talk to you real nice. They offer you some food. They'll even speak sweet nothings into your ear in the form of a lie. See, look, all you got to do is just tell us what you need to tell us, and you're free to go. That's all you got to do. Meanwhile, when they both leave that room, they're talking to each other about how they're going to screw that person in that interrogation room. Because ultimately, their goal is to get you. That's the goal. So when people go, oh my God, you're not going to vote for Joe Biden? Well, the Republicans going to win. So what? It's all the same. It's not any different. I've said this analogy before. I'll say it again. It is just like going into one of those restaurants where it is half Pizza Hut, half KFC. You want some pizza, but the people who are behind the counter are treating you like shit. So then you go to the other side of the counter and you get some KFC by the same people who are working behind the damn counter. The only difference is one has a different color uniform on. That's it. That's all. And so when they say, oh my God, if you vote for the Green Party, you're going to be voting for Trump. Like, look, all right, well, I'm not voting for Trump, so just pretend that's a vote for Biden. Because here's the thing. Voting for Trump is voting for Biden. Voting for Biden is voting for Trump. Because they work together, baby. It's always been that way. I just wanted to put that out there.
Crimes, supplying the bombs raining down on Gaza, the airplanes dropping them, the aircraft carriers defending the Israeli military, $10 million a day to strengthen the IDF, and propaganda to run political interference. The U.S. role in blocking a UN ceasefire resolution is absolutely unforgivable. We call for an investigation of the Netanyahu regime's war crimes, as well as the role of Biden and U.S. leaders in aiding and abetting them. And above all, these crimes must stop now. As a Jew who grew up just after the Holocaust, with relatives who fled pogroms and a grandfather named Israel, I take never again seriously, and that means never again for anyone. For all those reasons, we demand a ceasefire, an end to the blockade, humanitarian and medical relief, release of hostages and political prisoners, and an end to occupation and apartheid.
Now, of course she said ceasefire, right? But there were 4 other issues that she said also must happen. So, for humanitarian aid to come in, which some people have said, okay. But it also has to be, and the final thing she said was an end to the illegal occupation of Israel. That is the most important point. Because the thing is that none of this would have happened if the Zionists didn't try to take over Palestine 75 years ago. And that's the point. That's the point that a lot of people don't talk about. Because everybody's like, oh my God, October 7th, 75 years ago, damn it. Look at the history. 75 years ago, the Nakba, the great tragedy, where they literally stole the land. And then people are like, oh my God, Hamas, they did all these horrible things, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, it actually turns out that a lot of the things that they were accusing Hamas were doing actually was being done by the IDF. That was just pure projection, by the way. But oh my God, Hamas. And then it comes out to find out that Hamas actually targeted military military people primarily, and anybody who was a civilian was actually attacked by Israel themselves, because they said, "Fuck them hostages. We're gonna go after Israeli military. I'm sorry, we're gonna go after Hamas anyway, while they're bombing hospitals and schools and refugee camps." Meanwhile, let me ask you this, and go ahead and think about this as long and hard if you want to, but if Hamas was hiding in an Israeli hospital, would they bomb the hospital? If it was an Israeli school, would they bomb the school? You see, here's the thing. See, that's the thing. Because they're willing to be careful with white Israelis, but when it comes to brown Arabs, it's like, nah. Even if those Arabs are Jewish. Zionism is also an extension of white supremacy. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that. Anybody hear from the Ethiopian Jews about how they're being discriminated against? Or how a lot of Ethiopian Jewish women were being sterilized in Israel? Oh, but they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. And don't come at me with the, oh, but if you're LGBTQ, because number one, I'm gay. LGBTQ, they're free to celebrate, being gay in Israel. Number one, you can't get married. Gay marriage does not exist in Israel. Number two, hell, you can't even get married to somebody of a different religion if they're not Jewish. You literally have to leave Israel. They don't believe in interfaith marriages. So, yeah. So there has to be an end to the occupation and apartheid.
This is the only path to peace and security for us all.
So that was what she said. And the thing is, I would hope that somebody, that a lot of people come out with stronger condemnation of Israel and call for the ending of the occupation, the illegal occupation. And also, just so that everybody knows, under the Geneva Conventions, the people who are being illegally occupied have the right to resist occupation by any means necessary. So, if anybody has a problem with Palestinians fighting back, they need to consult international law. Because ultimately, that's what it is. They literally have the right to fight back. So, that's what's going on right now as far as Dr. Jill Stein. She's running. And a lot of people have some issues, especially in regards to the whole Peter Dow situation, about how she recommended Peter Dow to Dr. Cornel West. Number one, people make mistakes. So if you have a problem with Peter Dow, then if you are, willing to see Dr. Jill Stein as somebody who's just as imperfect as the rest of us, you have that. Also, Dr. Jill Stein, as she is running, as far as the Peter Dow situation, here's the thing. That's campaign structure. That is just operations. What about the policies, right? Because the thing is, ultimately, it's going to be about the policies of a campaign rather than just the operations of a campaign. You see, for me, it's about policy, right? And on top of it all, regarding policy, how many people out there are going to be looking at a campaign and going, who's the campaign manager? What's the history of the campaign manager? How many people out there on the street are going to be caring about that? How many of you knew who Jeff Weaver was? Did you know that he was the campaign manager for Bernie Sanders in 2020? Most people out there don't. They couldn't give a shit who Jeff Weaver was. I'm going to be honest with you. To them, it was about the policy. So that could be a slight against her, yeah. But I think it's minor in compared to the grand scheme of things. It's about how she moves through her campaign. It's about how her campaign moves through the political process. It's about the policies that she's pushing for in regards to, or in contrast to the other campaigns that are also running. So, do I think it's good that she's running? I personally think it's a good thing, because the more people outside the duopoly, especially who their policies are also outside the duopoly, because let's be real, I think that RFK Jr. is just a Democrat with an I next to his name. Because what changed of his policies since he left the Democratic Party? He's just like Bernie, a Democrat with an I next to his name. He's not a true independent. He's only running independent because the Democratic Party doesn't want to play. That's it. That's the only reason why he went independent. There's no real reason that he's an actual independent. He's still a Democrat in his heart. You want to know how democratic he is? He's a Zionist. He gives Netanyahu basically a tongue bath. He gives Israel a tongue bath every single time he talks about them. So yeah, that's the problem. So as far as the more people who are running outside duopoly, the better, because that means that more people will end up changing their registration to independent, really, right? And it's really moving towards an abolition of political parties, which, you know, and I'd argue I'd rather have no political parties than have a duopoly. So then everybody focuses on the issues, everybody focuses on the policies, and everybody holds every single politician's feet to the fire. That's what I think. So what do you guys think? Did you guys take the poll? Take a look at, what, Dr. Jill Stein's run means for many of you. I'm going to take a look at the poll myself just to see where we're at. So this is a healthy poll. So it says, what do you think about Dr. Jill Stein running in 2024? 53% said good. 7% said bad. 25% said neither good nor bad. And 15% said, I don't live in the United States. Wow. So that's pretty cool. There's a bunch of you who aren't even in the country. So you guys are watching internationally, which is awesome.